2, pregnant German Shepherd collapses near baby. The ending will break your heart. Scene 1. The fateful encounter, a mysterious appearance. It was a quiet afternoon in a small countryside neighborhood where the golden rays of the sun filtered gently through the trees. Little Emma, a curious and innocent 3-year-old girl, was playing alone in front of her family's wooden house, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of nature. She giggled softly as she collected wildflowers, completely unaware that her life was about to change forever. From the distance, the faint sound of rustling leaves caught her attention. Slowly emerging from the forest's edge were 2 large German shepherds. But these were no ordinary dogs. Their bodies were thin, their fur dirty and matted, and their bellies noticeably swollen with pregnancy. Each step they took was a struggle, their legs trembling, their breathing labored. The sight was both heartbreaking and haunting. Emma stood frozen, her young mind not fully understanding the scene before her. Yet there was no fear in her eyes, only curiosity mixed with innocent compassion. The 2 mother dogs, sensing her gentle presence, continued moving forward, as if drawn to her pure and peaceful energy. But then, one of them could go no further. With a soft, exhausted whimper, the weaker of the 2 collapsed onto the dusty ground, just a few feet away from Emma. Her eyes, filled with pain and desperation, locked onto the little girl's gaze, silently begging for help. It was a moment of fragile connection, a meeting of innocence and suffering, where a helpless child and 2 abandoned mothers crossed paths, setting into motion a story that would touch every heart forever. Scene 2. Helpless collapse. A cry for help. Emma's eyes widened as she watched the pregnant German shepherd collapse onto the ground right in front of her. The sound of the dog's labored breathing echoed in the stillness of the countryside, and for a moment, even the birds seemed to fall silent. The other German shepherd, still struggling to stay on her feet, whimpered anxiously, circling around her fallen companion, nudging her weakly with her nose. The little girl, with her tiny hands clutching her favorite stuffed toy, took a cautious step closer. Her innocent heart didn't understand the full meaning of pain or abandonment. But what she felt in that moment was stronger than words: compassion, concern, a child's pure instinct to comfort. Emma knelt down beside the exhausted dog. Her small voice whispered softly, "It's okay. I'm here." The dog lifted her tired eyes, filled with fear but also hope. Hope that somehow this tiny human could save them. Inside the house, Emma's parents, Mark and Sarah, heard her faint voice calling out. There was something different in her tone, something urgent. When they rushed outside, their hearts nearly stopped. What they saw was a scene that no parent could have expected. Their precious little daughter sitting next to a heavily pregnant, injured German shepherd, gently stroking her head, trying to comfort her. "Oh my God!" Sarah gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Mark immediately scanned the area, noticing the second pregnant dog standing guard nearby, equally frail and exhausted. The sight of 2 pregnant dogs in such terrible condition, wandering alone into their yard, was alarming and deeply heartbreaking. Without hesitation, Mark called the local animal rescue hotline. His voice trembled with urgency. "Please, we need help. There are 2 pregnant dogs here. One has collapsed. They're not going to make it without immediate care." As they waited, Sarah knelt beside Emma, wrapping her arms around her daughter protectively, but also unable to hold back tears. The look in the fallen dog's eyes wasn't just fear, it was trust, fragile, desperate trust placed in a little girl who had shown her kindness when the world had turned its back. Scene 3. The rescue begins. A race against time. Within minutes, the sound of tires on gravel broke the quiet as a white animal rescue van pulled into the Carter family's driveway. 2 volunteers jumped out. A young woman named Jenna, a seasoned rescuer with calm, empathetic eyes, and an older man named Tom, who had seen too many cases like this but still never stopped caring. They approached cautiously, their voices gentle and soothing. "It's okay, girls," Jenna murmured, crouching beside the collapsed German shepherd. The dog whimpered but didn't move. She was too weak. Her belly was visibly heaving with each breath, and her gums were pale. Tom examined her quickly and grimly shook his head. "She's dehydrated and dangerously close to going into shock. We don't have much time." The second dog stood nearby, watching every move protectively. She let out a low growl but didn't attack, just warning them that she was still guarding her friend, even in her weakened state. Emma stood beside her mother, clutching Sarah's hand tightly. Her wide eyes never left the dogs. "Are they going to be okay?" she asked softly. Jenna looked up, meeting the girl's gaze with a gentle smile. "We'll do everything we can, sweetheart." With practiced care, the rescuers loaded the collapsed dog onto a stretcher, covering her with a blanket and connecting her to fluids. She let out a faint cry, but her eyes stayed locked on Emma, as if she understood that this child's presence had saved her life. The second dog hesitated when Jenna approached her, but eventually, after sniffing Jenna's outstretched hand, she allowed them to lead her gently into the van beside her companion. "Follow us," Jenna told Mark. "If she goes into labor on the way, we'll need backup. Every second counts." Mark and Sarah exchanged a look, and without hesitation, they grabbed their keys. As the rescue van pulled away, little Emma stood on the porch, waving with her small hand. The two pregnant German shepherds were on their way to help, but it was clear this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Scene 4. The Hidden Truth. A past of cruelty revealed. As the rescue van sped down the rural road toward the nearest animal clinic, Jenna glanced back at the two German shepherds resting in the back. The weaker one was barely conscious, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain. The other mother dog sat pressed close to her, nuzzling her gently, refusing to leave her side. Tom broke the heavy silence. "These dogs, they didn't end up here by accident." Jenna nodded grimly. "I've seen this before. The scars on their bodies, the overbreeding signs, their terrified eyes. They're victims of a backyard breeding operation, probably abandoned when they were no longer useful." Tom's jaw clenched, used like machines, forced to have litter after litter for profit, and then left to die when they became weak or sick. Back at the Carter home, Mark and Sarah drove close behind the rescue van, their hearts sinking with every word they had overheard from the rescue team's radio. Emma sat quietly in the back seat, holding her stuffed animal close, too young to understand the full cruelty of the world, but sensing the sadness that hung heavy in the air. When they arrived at the clinic, a veterinarian team was already waiting. The weaker German shepherd was rushed inside for emergency treatment. The second mother dog hesitated at the door, looking back anxiously for her companion before Jenna reassured her and led her in. Inside, the vet examined both dogs. What they found broke everyone's hearts. Malnutrition, infected wounds, scars from previous abuse, and signs of repeated pregnancies without care. Mark felt his fists clench in anger. "How could anyone do this?" Jenna's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed deep sorrow. "Because to some people, animals are nothing but a way to make money, but not to us. To us, they're family." Emma, standing beside her mother, tugged Sarah's sleeve. "Mommy, they need us, don't they?" Sarah knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. They need kindness more than anything." And in that moment, the Carter family realized this was no longer just a rescue mission. This was a fight to give life, dignity, and love back to two forgotten mothers and their unborn puppies. Born. Scene 5, The Battle for Life, a night of hope and fear. Nightfall blanketed the small animal clinic in a quiet, fragile stillness. Inside the treatment room, the air was thick with tension. A mixture of fear, exhaustion, and hope battling for space in every heart present. The weaker of the two German Shepherd mothers, now named Grace by Jenna, lay on a padded table surrounded by the veterinary team. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes half-lidded, but within her fragile body there was still life, not just her own, but the tiny unborn puppies she had fought so hard to protect. "She's going into labor," the vet announced with urgency, "but her body is too weak. She won't survive this without help." Meanwhile, the second dog, who Emma had lovingly called Hope, paced restlessly in her kennel nearby, whining softly whenever Grace let out a pained cry. The bond between the two dogs was undeniable. They were more than companions. They were family. Mark, Sarah, and little Emma waited anxiously in the hallway. Emma clutched a small blanket she had brought from home, one of her favorites, hoping it would bring comfort to the brave dogs inside. Hours passed like days. Inside the treatment room, Grace fought a battle nature had never intended for her fragile state. With gentle words and steady hands, the vets guided the process. One by one, small wet bundles of life entered the world, fragile, blind, crying for warmth and safety. By the time the last puppy was delivered, Grace had given everything she had left. She turned her tired eyes toward Hope's direction, and for a brief moment, her tail thumped weakly against the table, a final gesture of connection. Then, surrounded by love and safety she had been denied for so long, Grace slipped away quietly. Hope let out a soft, mournful howl from her kennel, a sound that carried both grief and fierce determination. The room was silent except for the tiny cries of newborn puppies, orphans now, but not alone. Outside, Emma whispered through her tears, "Don't worry, Grace. We'll take care of them. We promise." And in that moment, something unspoken passed between every heart in the room. Life had won a small, precious victory. Scene 6. A mother's legacy. Hope embraces a new family. The next morning, the soft light of dawn crept through the windows of the small clinic. The night had been long, filled with loss and tears, but also with a fragile thread of hope. Hope, the surviving German Shepherd mother, lay curled protectively around the tiny litter of newborn puppies. They were not her own by blood, but in her heart they were already hers. The veterinary team and rescuers watched in awe at her instinctive devotion. She licked their small bodies gently, guided them toward her for warmth, and responded to their weak cries with the tenderness of a mother who had lost much, but still had love to give. Jenna knelt beside her, softly stroking Hope's matted fur. "You're amazing, girl. Grace would be so proud of you." In the waiting room, Emma peeked through the glass window, her small hands pressed against the cool surface. She could see Hope, surrounded by the tiny, fragile puppies, some still struggling to latch on for the first time. Sarah crouched beside her daughter. "Do you want to meet them, sweetheart?" Emma nodded quietly, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and wonder. With careful steps, she entered the room and approached Hope. The brave mother lifted her head, her tired eyes watching the little girl closely. But there was no fear, only trust. Emma knelt down slowly, placing the small blanket she had brought near the puppies. "It's okay, Mama," Emma whispered in her tiny voice. "These are your babies now." Hope let out a soft, almost grateful whine, as if understanding the child's words. She rested her head beside the puppies, her breathing steady, surrounded by the fragile new lives she had vowed to protect. For everyone present, it was a moment of silent reverence. The pure, unbreakable bond between a mother and her children, no matter how they came into her life. And for Emma, it was a lesson in love, that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choosing to stay, to fight, to love, no matter the scars, no matter the past. Hope had chosen them, and now they would choose her forever. Scene 7. A new beginning, bringing Hope home. Days passed gently at the animal clinic. Hope's condition improved slowly, her body regaining strength thanks to care, nourishment, and the comforting presence of her adopted puppies. The tiny pups thrived under her protection, growing stronger each day, their faint cries filling the quiet rooms with life. Jenna and the veterinary team knew that Hope needed more than just medical treatment. She needed a home, a place where she and the puppies could heal not only their bodies, but their hearts. That's when Sarah and Mark stepped forward without hesitation. "We want to foster them," Sarah said softly. "All of them, Hope and the puppies. They belong with us." It was a decision made not out of obligation, but out of love. A love that Emma had first shown on that unforgettable afternoon when Grace and Hope wandered into their lives. The day Hope left the clinic was both joyful and emotional. Wrapped in a warm blanket, surrounded by her puppies nestled in a soft basket, she was gently carried to the Carter family's car. Emma waited by the door, her eyes wide with excitement and a tenderness beyond her years. As they drove home, Hope rested her head beside the basket, occasionally glancing at Emma in the back seat. The little human who had unknowingly saved them all. When they arrived at the family's cozy countryside home, Emma led the way inside. They had prepared a soft bed in a quiet corner of the living room, filled with blankets, toys, and bowls of fresh water and food. Hope stepped inside slowly, her paws hesitant at first, but as she looked around, her body seemed to relax. This was not a place of pain or fear. This was a place of safety. Emma knelt beside her, whispering, "This is your home now, forever." Hope licked the little girl's hand, her tail giving the smallest wag, a gesture of trust and acceptance. And so, within the walls of a simple house filled with love, a new family began its journey. Not perfect, not without scars, but beautifully whole in the way that only love could create. Scene 8. Healing Together. The power of love and trust. The days that followed were nothing short of magical for the Carter family and their newest members. Slowly but surely, hope began to blossom in her new environment. The fear in her eyes faded, replaced with gentleness and quiet gratitude. The puppies grew stronger by the day, their tiny legs becoming sturdier, their eyes beginning to open, discovering the bright new world around them. Emma spent every moment she could with Hope and the puppies. She would sit quietly beside them, reading her little picture books out loud, her soft voice filling the room with innocence and warmth. Hope often rested her head in Emma's lap, comforted by the child's gentle touch. One special afternoon, something happened that deeply touched everyone's hearts. Hope, who had never really played since coming into the Carters' home, picked up a soft, stuffed toy from the floor, one of Emma's favorites, and gently nudged it toward the little girl. It was a gesture of connection, of trust. Emma giggled softly, accepting the toy, then placed it near the puppies as if sharing it with them too. It was a simple moment, yet it spoke louder than words. A broken soul learning to love again. Meanwhile, Mark built a small wooden fence in the backyard so the puppies could safely explore once they grew bigger. Sarah, with patient care, continued tending to Hope's health, making sure her wounds, both seen and unseen, were healing day by day. Neighbors who heard the story began stopping by with supplies, food, and warm wishes. Hope's story spread through the community like a quiet wave of inspiration. People were reminded that kindness could change a life, even save it. But above all, it was Emma who remained the heart of their healing. With every day that passed, Hope followed Emma more closely, her protective instincts now rooted in love rather than fear. In this little home, surrounded by trees and golden sunlight, a new chapter was being written, not a story of sadness and loss, but one of healing, trust, and a love that had found its way through pain to something beautiful and everlasting. Scene 9. A community inspired. Hope's story spreads. As weeks passed, Hope and her puppies became a symbol of resilience, not only within the Carter family but throughout the entire countryside community. News of their incredible story, 2 pregnant German shepherds abandoned, a toddler's innocent kindness saving them, and the heartbreaking loss of Grace, had spread far beyond their little town. People from nearby villages and towns began visiting the Carters, bringing gifts, food, blankets, and donations for Hope's care. Some came simply to meet the brave mother and her growing puppies, while others came seeking something deeper, to feel hope for themselves. A local journalist wrote an article about the story titled "The Dog Who Learned to Love Again and the Little Girl Who Saved Her." The article quickly gained attention online, reaching animal lovers everywhere. It wasn't long before animal rescue organizations reached out, offering support, medical care, and even future homes for the puppies when the time was right.
But for Emma, none of this fame mattered.
All she cared about was that Hope was safe and that the puppies were happy. Every morning she would check on them first, greeting them with her small voice and an infectious smile. Hope, once broken and fearful, now greeted visitors with calm curiosity. She stayed close to Emma, her faithful protector, but no longer shook in fear at the sight of new faces. Mark and Sarah were overwhelmed by the generosity of the community. They had always believed in kindness, but this experience had shown them its true power. Hope wasn't just healing, she was teaching everyone around her a lesson in patience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. One sunny afternoon, a small group of local children came to visit. Emma proudly introduced them to the puppies, letting them pet their soft fur. Hope watched calmly, knowing that her babies were safe. It was clear now. The pain and cruelty that once marked Hope's life were being replaced by something beautiful. A new legacy was taking shape, not one of suffering, but of kindness spreading from one little girl's heart to an entire community that chose love over indifference. Scene 10. A legacy of love. A future full of hope. Months passed like a gentle breeze, and the Carter home had transformed into a place filled with life, laughter, and unconditional love. The puppies grew bigger and stronger with each passing week, their playful energy bringing joy to everyone who visited. Hope, once a fragile, wounded soul, had become the heart of the family. Her eyes, once haunted by fear, now sparkled with quiet contentment. She had not only survived, she had found her purpose, to love and protect. When the time came, many of the puppies found loving, forever homes with families from the community, families who had followed Hope's story from the beginning and wanted to be part of her legacy. But the Carters knew from the start that one puppy would stay with them forever, the smallest of the litter, a gentle female pup, Emma named Grace, in honor of the mother who had given everything. On a warm afternoon, Emma sat in the backyard under the big oak tree, her arms wrapped around both Hope and little Grace. The sun filtered softly through the leaves, casting a golden glow over them.
"Thank you, Hope," Emma whispered, her childlike voice full of love. "Thank you for being my friend."
Hope rested her head gently on Emma's lap, her tail thumping against the grass. A mother at peace. As Mark and Sarah watched from the porch, their hearts swelled with pride. They had not only rescued a dog, they had rescued themselves in ways they hadn't expected. In that quiet moment beneath the sky, the message was clear. Love heals, kindness saves, and sometimes the smallest acts of compassion, like a little girl kneeling beside a wounded dog, can change the world. Hope's story was no longer about pain. It was about family. It was about forever.